So, who are you?
My name's Hogge.
What and when was your first experience or encounter with the cube?
My first encounter with the building that the cube's in is different from my encounter with the cube, I suppose. My first encounter with the cube cinema would probably be when we were thinking of the names, you know, what to call the project, and what do you want to do when there's background noise and stuff, people coming in and out, just keep it going?
Just keep it going, I reckon.
So I can sort of remember vividly the kind of the going through that kind of naming process. I remember some of the other names that were on the table, and I've been doing a thing called Club Rhombus. So we kind of, and because it's King Square, the cube was in King Square. We kind of like the idea that a rhombus and a square sort of made a cube somehow. But also we also thought as well. We also thinking about, you know, this film and. As in the celluloid film, and silver crystals are cubic as well, they're like cubes. But my first encounter with the building is harder to determine. I guess when I first moved to Bristol, it was a second run arts cinema there, it's called the Arts Centre Cinema. So it would have been the first film, I can't remember what the first film was that I saw here, but I can remember early impressions of coming in to this was the kind of ticket, well, there's a ticket booth over there just on its own, and a fridge selling ice cream. The door that goes behind the bar into the office now wasn't there. We knocked that hole through, so it's kind of, and it was panelled in this kind of like sort of plastic veneer. You might get in a sort of Chinese takeaway, and there's a little bench or something. It was pretty weird. So that sort of covers both those things maybe.
Where had you come from?
Where had I come from? Before that encounter, those encounters. I don't know. I tend to build my bridges. I don't think too much about where I come from. I kind of think about where I am.
How did you come to be involved in the cube?
I'm one of the original co-founders of the Cube. So I never really volunteered for the Cube in a way. I never put myself, I never volunteered and joined it. I was one of the people that initiated it. So it was always something we felt like we'd, like sort of given birth to in a way. I've been doing some kind of screening events around in a warehouse space of Bristol. And I'd come here as a punter, to see films. And in fact, Fat Paul did an event here, sort of secret music night. There weren't any there was a mention of it in the listings paper venue, but you had to ring this number to find out when it was and stuff like that, and whether it was going to happen. I remember coming to that, and that was really good. Pregnant played, Rich Beale and stuff, and Gareth Sagan people. And I remember then thinking, wow, it's like that stage is really good, And then also, the group I was involved with, Club Rhombus, we've been doing screening events in Easton, and we hired it actually. We hired the cinema to do like a night of Starovich animations, and Jesse, one of Jesse's bands there, Jesse Morningstar, it was Jesse and the Newts, I think. They did a soundtrack to it. So we kind of, realised that it was more, more could be done with this space than people that were using it just as a cinema. So I suppose it's kind of like a bit of a sort of long, boring history really, but we've been doing these kind of screening nights, and then I met some other people who are filmmakers and script writers, and we kind of got together and formed like a little group. And we were based over in Portland Square, actually, the same building that Cozy's is in, the top floor of the building. Below us was this guy Mike, who did special effects, sort of prosthetic effects for TV and film. So he had you go down to his studio and pull out a drawer, and there'd be like hands and heads and bits of body in it and stuff like that. And in that time, when we were kind of looking for projects to do, this place shut down, the Arts Centre Cinema shut down. We thought, that'd be interesting. Could we could we take on a cinema? What if we could run a cinema and make some money and, you know, run it as a business, and with the money we make from cinema we could fund our own film projects and stuff. That was our kind of naive idea. So that was the sort of basic genesis of it.
Have you got a particular standout memory or memories that encapsulate your Cube experience?
I was dreading that question really, because I can't think of, when I get asked this question I always think of the most sort of banal, stupid answer really. The thing that I don't have anymore, but I used to have it for quite a long time, up until quite recent, but I don't get it anymore now, is this sort of feeling, this kind of sensation, this feeling of the excitement that we had when we first got it. And I remember that every evening, basically, after working all day on other things, you know, me and Jack, who's with the other guy doing the sort of programming and the projection and stuff, would sort of we'd make a cup of coffee in the office and grab a choc ice from the freezer. We'd sort of scurry up to the projection with a coffee and a choc ice, and that was our sort of dinner. And we did that every night, which is quite a lot of ice cream and choc ice. I projected every night for over a year and a half, I think, every single screening, and so it was kind of like a ritual. And so I just remember that excitement of having your own building, you know. So that lasted till, even though I gave up the choc ice ages ago, but every time I come in and walk up, I get that feeling of like, wow, we've got our own space, we've got our own building, our own cinema, you know. So that's one, and there's so many in a way. It's hard to kind of trawl through my sort of deep memories now, because a lot of it's just really, really in the past. Yeah, hard to say.
What is the Cube?
What is the Cube? Well, it's the don't know. For me, I still don't know actually. Now, for me, it's. I think maybe the thing is that it doesn't know actually. It's not. In a way, it's there isn't an easy answer to that. I mean, there's the obvious things like it's a building, you know, it's a cinema, it's a theatre. But then when we did the Cube Microplex, the Cube Cinema, when we didn't really know what we were getting into at all. Actually, we always knew there was potential in many things in terms of space and how we reacted to it. What we did with it, we knew we weren't just going to do cinema. We knew we were going to use a stage and do live events and things like that. But also later on, when it started to really kind of gather a good team, that then the potential was in other things as well, like other kinds of productions, other kinds of art output in a way. We thought of it as, some of the people thought of it as being like an artist run. A cinema is kind of run by artists. So it wasn't so much the films, it wasn't so much the content or the work you showed at the end of the day, but it was how you did things, you know, how you went about doing that.
Shall I get the door?
Yeah, do you want to pause it? Yeah, so I always got like this idea that, that first and foremost it is a cinema, and I was like the idea that you kind of use cinema as kind of a scaffolding to build certain types of things, you know. I know its background is as a theatre, amateur dramatic theatre. But for me, it's found its kind of, because of the projection room and the history of it, established history and social use of it. I like to think of it more as a cinema and as its kind of prime function, and therefore it's always as a response to sort of what cinema is, as to what you're doing, you know.
A single word.
A single word to encapsulate the Cube.
I guess, yeah.
Movie tone.
What is the Cube for?
What is it for? It's for using and abusing.
What do you know about the cube?
What do I know about it?
Especially anything that other people might not know.
Too much sometimes, I think.
Hang on.
Yeah. Too much and not enough, maybe, at the same time.
How did the cube come to be? I mean, you sort of said that.
I think I've answered that.
How did it come to be what it is now?
I can't answer that.
Do you associate yourself with any particular aspect or function?
Any aspect or function? I suppose I have associations because of what I do here with the building and the equipment and stuff like that. So I'm sort of tied into a lot of those things. Anyway, yeah, that's probably. I mean, in that there's a lot, you know. A big thing for me is always, you know, that the space isn't a fixed thing. We can modify the space. You know, we modified it quite a lot in stages when we came in anyway. When we found it, the state it was in, it was they'd reduced the people, the Hogge family who were running it had kind of reduced their operation down to sort of like the smallest footprint you can, you know, in the space that you could imagine. You know, the whole zone, the zone was full of junk, and you know, another whole set of cinema chairs, for instance, green ones, not in very good condition. The area that's the lounge now is like another office that was sort of sectioned off with the wall and stuff and a door. That was just full of junk and rubbish. They didn't use it. And the office, the thing that's the office now, is full of boxes of paperwork and Empire magazines and Sight and Sound magazines, with one tiny little desk, like a school desk, where he typed up the kind of program on a bit of paper, you know, and got it photocopied. So they were running a really tight ship, you know. So discovery of all those areas is really a really important thing, to kind of go into those areas and clean them out and use them. And then we did things like, you know, we kind of knocked that door over there through so you could get through from the office, behind the bar. You know, we knocked the lounge did operate as a ticket office initially, or the area by the side of the steps. We built a counter there, and then that got knocked through into the lounge. And then what's the garden now, and the entranceway used to be just like a backyard, you know, and then we kind of did that. So we've kind of, it's really evolved since we've been here. We've kind of chipped away at bits and, you know, knocked walls down and added, and it's still got a lot more potential. So I do associate a lot with the building, with the kind of the fabric of the building, and what the potential is still to kind of knock walls down and remodel it, you know, not think of it as a static thing.
Where are you going, and where is the cube going?
I don't know whether it's the same place or not. A lot of things are up in the air in terms of because it's kind of open to participation, you know, cube defined very much by what goes on here, you know, what people are doing, and you can't really control who those people are. You can't really dictate from one decade to the next who comes along, picks up the reins and does stuff. So where I might want it to, you know, I don't know where it's, I can't see where it's going, you know, I can say where I want it to go. I certainly want it to move much more towards, you know, production projects based here, other kinds of facilities like film, that work with moving image, but work with film, analogue moving image and stuff. Because it gives you kind of a slight degree of, because you look a degree of autonomy over your kind of processes is then. You're not kind of like a, you know, you're not on this conveyor belt of software upgrades and hardware upgrades and stuff. And there's a whole kind of world of stuff out there. There's a whole lot of movement in Europe of labs and kind of creative projects and stuff that all revolve around use of sort of lo-fi equipment. So I'd like to see it, you know, go down that road a bit more, and more production, more projects that, you know, more like a large studio. I think it's term that Chiz referred to, like a large studio, so the whole, lots of things can be attached to it and built off it and run off it. A lot more. I like to see more daytime activity here, use of the daytime hours to do events and things. So it takes it at the moment. It's kind of levelled out at very much a kind of workers' society in terms of like how workers, people with 9 to 5 jobs, people holding down 9 to 5 jobs, and their rhythms of the week and the days of the week kind of define the pattern. So the weekend is where the big things are, and the evenings where everything happens. And I like to see us kind of challenge that a bit. So running really good daytime events, and to me it's like there's a difference between commitment and volunteering. Big difference. Volunteering can mean anything. Commitment is not so flexible, because you have to have something to commit to, and it takes your time away. So I can say easily that people the excuse why people might not be able to do things is because they've got a job. I would say, well, then give you a job in, and then it's a little bit more difficult to say anything to the question of like, well, you've got to pay the bills and stuff, and I mean just all those kinds of things, like right down to the bottom level. You've got to pay your bills, you've got to live somewhere, and all that kind of sort of philosophy. It's like there's no reason why the Q can't address some of those things as well. Like with the idea of a housing co-op, like a sister co-op that gets set up that's a housing co-op, so that the Q then addresses the idea of living, and because of its workforce needs to live somewhere and occupy homes, it can kind of move into that area. So people might have more free time, or that interests me a little bit more. I think it's become, like I say, it's become too much. It's kind of revolves around kind of 9 to 5 people who are working, and they come into the Cube as a kind of like their sort of their thing, their kind of part-time thing. I think that's conditioned to extent, how much people do. And it's generally moved from, I'm kind of going off on a bit of a tangent here, but it's, in my experience over the sort of 13, 14 years, it's generally moved from a small team of people who are in here a lot in the daytime, and they think of it as their work, and they might be freelancers, and they might be able to have that flexibility in their lives, or they might be signing on, they might be on the dole. There's no problem. There's no problem with that. For me, the whole Cube is a government subsidised project to a certain extent, because of all the people that had to spend all their time doing it, every hour of the day and night running it to make it happen. And they were all people that were on the dole or unemployed. So I think that's a good thing to do now in society, is to have free time and have a value to your time and your efforts and your work and what you do. So I lost my thread a bit there. I can't remember what I was going to say. How was I going to in my mind I was imagining you could balance that to something else, but I can't remember. It's gone.
Well, you're talking in terms of a sister project with the...
Oh yeah, so there's no reason why I can't kind of address those things. If I'm not saying we should encourage people to sort of throw their jobs in so they can come down here full time. But what the Cube needs is kind of commitment. It needs people to take it on as if it's their job, as if it is their work. I don't see what the problem is with that. I don't see... Oh yes, that's what I say. Yeah, the pattern. It's generally moved from a smaller team of people doing everything. Gradually, each time someone left, like when Lucy P left, for instance, she was doing so much that we had to create 3 jobs. 3 people had to take on what she was doing, and then each of those 3 people, when they leave, they need 2 people to do what they do, and so it's gone from that up. It's fewer people doing a lot to a lot of people doing a little, and now there's this big sprawling workforce of people all doing kind of the minimum. So it's a bit like cricket in the sense. It's very English. It's like it's minimum effort but with maximum gain, and that's the principle behind cricket. Is you hit a 6, you don't have to run. You hit hard enough, the minimum strike, and you get a 6, and that I think it's become that kind of culture here a little bit. So it's empty in the daytime, and most of the hours, where the rent is being paid for this site, you could say that most of the time that it's empty, not being used. So everyone's working, everyone's got their jobs they have to do. So I would personally like to see that. I would like to think of it more as my work again, and come in here a lot, and other people, and engage with other people who are here in the daytime, and thinking of it as their work. And if they're people that need support from each other artistically, or with their, with their work, we can do that for each other. If it needs financial support through mechanisms that the cube's plugged into, then the cube can do that. I think it's more exciting than coming in doing as little as possible, and then having to shoot off because you've got to go to work or something. I really value every volunteer, and I think the cube does.
Value, saying you do value the.
I'm saying that it might.
Volume.
I'm not trying to set myself up as being critical of society, the kind of working society. Like the mainstream 9 to 5 working, where everyone's got to earn money and pay their rent and blah blah blah. I'm not. It may look like a criticism of that, and in some ways it is. It's just that I think what the cube needs, the cube best thrives really when people take it on and commit to it, and therefore it's the main thing for them, not their hobby or not something they do in their spare time. It becomes their main thing, or at least on equal terms. So they might, so it does suit a certain type of person better. It suits kind of a freelance person, more than someone that's got a static fixed job. But of course the cube benefits hugely from some of the people here that are in those proper salary jobs and stuff. Computers and stuff we get hold of, and the kind of skills that people have got. I think the cube does value that, but I just think that it thrives better. It does better from having that kind of work, that kind of team here, because then you can get things done. If you're always doing things through little meetings and little amount of time, you're never going to develop it. Never going to develop it really. And I think that's kind of been going on for a little while now. That people it's just kind of scraping by. Because you get out what you put in. If you don't put a huge amount in, you're not going to get a huge amount out.
Can you make a silly face and a silly noise?
Never.
Can you draw a cube in the air?
Can I draw a cube in the air?
The frame's quite tight.
Is it? Where's the frame?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was roughly it.
If I was going to draw a cube in the air, it'd be like this. It'd be.
Yeah.
Was that in the shot?
Yeah, it was. It was good. It was focused on. To just do it again, and I'll focus on your fingers.
Okay. I'll do the top one a bit lower, so it's more like okay. Got it?
Yeah.
So it's.
Well, that's all these questions. Have you got any question that you want to ask? And then I can ask the next person.
Oh, okay. You're going to try that out, eh?
Try it out.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder sometimes about maybe how much people think it's worth. How much people think it's worth as a business. What they think its business value is. If it's about, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Because that's that's not subjective. There's a right or wrong answer. There's an answer to that. I think. Maybe other money things, yeah. Like how much do people think it? I mean, we report it anyway in the AGMs and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know.
Do you want to ask any of the questions that I asked you?
Do I want to ask them?
Yeah.
To you?
Yeah, well it's like the cube asking itself what it is overall. Did any of those particular questions chime with you in any way that you'd be, because I could cut it so this part of the cube is asking another part.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, I tend to go off on sort of tangents anyway, and just use this sort of an initial question as a kind of a launching sort of pad for a whole rant about something or a whole chain of thought, And so I think it's good to kind of have that sort of shapelessness to it in a way as well. because even if it's general like that, what the cube, what's it for, you can sort of answer that so many different ways, you know what I mean? There's so many different levels to that. For me, anyway. I don't know.
I included that because that's what my dad says whenever I show him anything I've made.
Right, he says, what's it for?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Which is it's a good question, but
yeah, it's a hard question.
Yeah.
It's very, what's the word? It's kind of, it's cuts down to the essence of something, doesn't it? Sometimes there isn't for anything.
Yeah.
Things are valid processes in their own right, in a way. And the cube certainly is that, I think. People, you can look at it and say, it's just the kind of running of this cinema, it's just the running of the space, the keeping of the space. Because the things that everyone's got such completely different ideas of it. No one's really on the same page, really, in a way, I'd imagine. Or you're going to get kind of different groupings of people, so, what is the point? If people ask what the point is, they might stop. In a way, it's good not to know, it's good not to think what it's for. It's easy to say what it isn't for, isn't it? It's easy to say it isn't here to just show these kinds of films, or it isn't here just to keep a certain amount of people happy. It's kind of the not knowing of it, really. Because when we had this fire and it shut down for 13 months, there was this kind of talk about whether it could move somewhere else, whether it could move to a different building, or what it would become if it didn't have this building anymore. And I don't really think that it'd be anything without it. I really think it's everything that happens here really is in a way a response to this building, this kind of site. If the building somehow went, or we lost control of the site in some way, I just wouldn't be interested in anything, that was in the name of the cube at all, beyond it. Just get on to other things. So the buying of the building is a kind of key thing, because then it's ownership of the building is a whole different thing from kind of paying rent, doing all this work, making all this money, which then we hand over to someone. It's always seemed slightly kind of a strange thing. Why would anyone want to come in and do that? Why would people want to work for free, or work voluntarily, i.e. not paid, and to give free labour, which is a value, labour has a value, whether there's remuneration or not. For some private landlord guy to kind of go and cash in his investment, it's like, so owning it is going to be radical in a way. Owning it is going to be like, hopefully people will respond. We can really up the stakes. We can say, right, we can really kick ass now. It hasn't really started, this project, really. So if people hadn't have instigated that process, it's a bit kind of like a herd of sheep in a way. Even though sheep aren't easy to herd around, they're actually quite difficult. They spot a weakness in your chain and exploit it, But we are the kind of, in a way, we're the sheep and we're the sheepdogs, interchangeably. But without that kind of guidance, it's just kind of a herd that, it just would carry on going, paying rent. We just and people would have fallen away, and it needs that kind of It needs kind of like dogs amongst the sheep, I think. Yeah. It's a horrible term, isn't it, sheep, for people? I'm not thinking that anyone here is a sheep. Terrible metaphor, that. Maybe lambs.
Well, amoeba.
Yeah.
Or different, that's...
Yeah. Amoeba.
Insulting as well, isn't it? Because
it's like a low life.
Simple.
It's like pond life. No, I don't.
But part of the structure, part of an evolving ecosystem.
Yeah, I think to me it's more but also it's more like a role. It's not a personal thing, but it's people play that role of sheep. You can come in here and not do much and be vain. You're doing that role of being a bit unguided and a bit directionless and not being interested in the history of it. You know, you just come into the place. You think, oh, it's a theatre cinema. Great, you know, let's do this and that, and it's got a huge history. You know, so you're playing a role. It's not sort of a personal thing against people. It's just that it's an easy thing to do. Is to sort of be slightly. Just kind of do as you're told, or just tow things along, or not question the spirit of somewhere or the history of it, you know. But then that's partly it's the organisation's fault as well for not making that visible, you know, not making that prevalent or foreground so people can see. There's no review process, for instance, is there, of work that goes on here. It's always struggled with that. It's just too busy doing the next thing. But to have like a review process where you look at the last month critically, you know, or the last year or something. That's all work that it won't get done by the sort of general workforce. Someone has to kind of spearhead that. Yeah. More like a cloud, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of drifting by. Want me to say any more?
Have you got anything?